for joining us at LULAC's Latino Leaders, the Past, the Present, and the Future Spotlight for Hispanic Heritage Month. With this section, we're trying to highlight Latinos who have made great contributions to this country. And today I have the honor to talk to Mr. Roland Roebuck, a DC Latino community activist, a dear friend, and most important, very knowledgeable on the subject that we're discussing today. We're going to be talking today about Arthur Schomburg. No, let me correct myself. Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. Hello, Mr. Roland. How are you today?
Sara, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you supporting this initiative. Roland, I really wanted to talk about Arturo Alfonso Schomburg because a lot of people within our community, the Latino community, don't even know Arturo Alfonso Schomburg because he's better known as Arthur Schomburg here in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about Arturo Schomburg, please?
Arturo Schomburg, the name itself has caused a lot of confusion within our community because a lot of people believe that he is not Latino based on his last name. Arturo Alfonso Schomburg was born in January 24, 1874 in Santurce, Puerto Rico. His mother, Mary Joseph, was from the Virgin Islands, at that time called Danish West Indies. And his father was Carlos Federico Schomburg, who also was in the Virgin Islands and also Puerto Rico. So Schomburg is a combination of these two nationalities.
Well, how interesting. He has something in common with you, as a matter of fact. Because if I recall, you also have that type of background. Your mother's from Puerto Rico, and you also have some roots in the Virgin Islands as well.
Yes.
What a coincidence. Well, then, without a doubt, you are definitely the expert in this matter. Roland, we're going to be discussing Arturo Schomburg. I want to get a little background on his education, his upbringing. I know it was in Puerto Rico. He did go to school in Puerto Rico, is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe that sometime during his upbringing or his education in Puerto Rico, he asked a teacher why they never discussed Blacks in the history of Puerto Rico. And I'm a little confused, but I think she replied, do you know a little bit about that story? Can you clarify that a little bit for me?
Yes, while Schomburg was in 5th grade, he made the inquiry as to why the presence of Blacks is not reflected in the classroom. The teacher replied that Blacks have no heroes, they have no history, and they have not accomplished anything of worth. This had a serious impact upon Schomburg, and it was his guiding light to disprove this fallacy that was shared by his teachers. So he begins the whole issue of collecting, researching, writing, etc., to disprove that negative statement that was made by his teacher.
Well, as sad as it is that a teacher, an educator would make a statement as that one, it may have been a blessing, even though it was marred with darkness with the way the teacher expressed that sentiment, which is a fallacy. So we can pretty much say that may have been the motivation for him to spend his life collecting material demonstrating the accomplishment of the African diaspora and the scope of Black history. So he is a big influence in terms of what we know as Black history, which today is known as African American history.
That is true, and it impacts not only the Hispanic community, but the Black community also, because his collection was able to help many researchers that relied on his collection in order to conduct their academic studies. So the collection of Schomburg is very, very, very important in terms of providing the basis for research, doctoral thesis, etc. And the New York library system in 1926 purchased his whole collection for the amount of $10,000. With that money, he decided to conduct further research, and he traveled to Spain, Germany, France, and England to continue his quest to increase his collection. And currently, we know that the library in Harlem has a section dedicated to Arturo Schomburg.
Actually, I think the museum is actually called Arturo Schomburg.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough that when the United States Postal Service issued a stamp honoring him,
yes,
I was part of that. I was part of that campaign. That was many, many years ago. And that's when I first heard of Arturo Schomburg.
Wow.
Because they call him Arthur Schomburg. And oddly enough, what people don't realize, yes, the museum is in Harlem, but it happens to be in Spanish Harlem.
Right.
And that is the connection. And it's amazing that this little kid from Puerto Rico, because I know he went to the States when he was about 17 or something like that.
Yes. He travels to the States in 1891 when he was 17, and he settles in Harlem. And it was very fortunate for him that when he arrived there, he was embedded in the Harlem Renaissance. So he was exposed to artists, intellectuals, activists, etc. So he was able to absorb a lot of, let's call it, intellectual energy.
Yes, it does. And I know that his collection contains works from Frederick Douglass and many other outstanding African Americans. And it's amazing that he was able to collaborate with the African American community, which is magnificent, because that collaboration brought out all this. He was trying to reach out and find out about his own history, but the reality is our histories are the African American Latino history has a lot in common, and that's something that, thanks to him, we have all this wonderful information. And again, we're able to prove that, yes, we've made great contributions to this country, and many people don't know about that.
Right.
So,
but unfortunately, our academic system has not highlighted his importance and his collaboration with the Black and other communities. So it is our individual responsibility to learn more about Schomburg and use him as an example of someone that was able to create this mass of intellectual material.
I know he collected more than 10,000 items.
Yes.
Did he make any contribution or any of this that you know of? Because I don't know. Any contribution of these materials to Puerto Rico, to the University of Puerto Rico?
Well, the strange thing is this. I grew up near the University of Puerto Rico, and I know the whole campus. So I have not seen any statue related to Schomburg. The issue here is, what is the responsibility of academia to recognize one of our gigantic icons and ensure that he is represented in these campuses? Right now, I'm on a campaign to contact the University of Puerto Rico to find out what are they planning to do with respect to the presence of Arturo Schomburg.
So do you believe, and when I go home, I'm gonna make it a point to go there and check that there's none of his documents were given to the University of Puerto Rico?
I will have to verify that, but the fact that he was able to sell to New York and not Puerto Rico was an indication that he felt that selling to New York was going to be more effective than selling to Puerto Rico, because he was keenly aware of the level of racism that existed within the school system that denied the presence of Afro-Puerto Ricans in the national experience.
Okay. So with that said, Roland, you've given us a lot of information, and I just once again want to thank you for participating and for the information you've provided us with. But if you had a message to give our Latino community, what would that message be right now?
The message is that we have to research the legacy of Arturo Schomburg in order to feel a high level of pride about someone that was very dedicated, very focused in discovering and sharing the legacy and contributions of Blacks throughout history. And the challenge is also for the Black community to further understand that Puerto Ricans were also interested in their Africanness. So the challenge for predominantly Hispanic universities is to embrace Schomburg, set up fellowships in order to continue the legacy of this man, who was very, very key in increasing our collective pride.
And I would also like you to send out a message to our Latino brothers and sisters, to the community at large, with regard to what's going on currently with this pandemic. It's affecting all of our communities. Do you have a message for our community with regards to that?
The message is that you have to accept the science, you have to vaccinate, and you need to encourage your family members to engage in responsible health practices, because we don't need to be visiting funeral homes with this degree of frequency. We need to ensure that our family live longer than expected.
Thank you so much, Roland. Ladies and gentlemen, Roland Roebuck, civil rights leader in Washington, D.C., a dear friend, mi hermano. I want to thank you, and most important, thank you so much for giving us information on a figure as Arturo Schomburg, who is so important in the history of the United States, yet we don't know much about him. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
And I thank LULAC for selecting Schomburg during our Hispanic Heritage Month.